They told her to endure the pain. Her own mother sold her to a vampire for $3 million, calling her worthless, disposable, a burden that finally had value. But when Lucian Ravencroft discovered Serafina carried blood rarer than diamonds, everything changed. In 72 hours, she went from invisible waitress to the most powerful woman in Boston.
You may now kiss the bride. I now pronounce you husband and wife.
The rain in Boston always felt like a warning. But tonight, standing in the crumbling brownstone on Marlborough Street, Serafina Devereaux understood it was something worse. It was a funeral dirge, the kind that plays when everything you thought you knew turns to ash. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 9. Each chime echoed through the empty rooms like a countdown. Tick, tock, time's up. Sarah stood in front of the full-length mirror in what used to be her childhood bedroom. The reflection staring back was a stranger. White silk clung to her frame, a vintage gown her mother had selected with all the care one gives to gift wrapping. Beautiful on the surface, meant to disguise what was really inside. A sacrifice. The dress was Vera Wang, modified with lace sleeves to hide the trembling. Sarah's hands shook no matter how hard she clenched them. Her fingers were raw from scrubbing tables at the diner. Her nails, bitten short from anxiety, looked obscene against the delicate fabric. She didn't belong in this dress. She didn't belong in this life. But then again, when had she ever belonged anywhere? Stop fidgeting. The voice cut through the room like a blade. Cold. Sharp. Vivian Devereaux stood by the vanity, adjusting diamond earrings that cost more than Sarah's yearly wages. Vivian was 48, but could pass for 35. Botox, fillers, personal trainers, everything money could buy. Money that should have been gone. Money that should have disappeared with her husband 8 months ago. But Vivian looked wealthier than ever. Her dress was Chanel, black and severe. Her hair, freshly colored platinum blonde, was swept into a chignon that probably cost $500 at that salon on Newbury Street, the one Sarah had walked past 1,000 times but never entered. "You look like a frightened child," Vivian said. Her lips, painted blood red, barely moved. "Lucian hates children." Sarah's throat tightened. "I am frightened, Mother." "Don't call me that." The words hit like a slap. Vivian turned, and for a moment their eyes met in the mirror. Green eyes. They both had them. The same shade as New England moss. It was the only thing they shared. Everything else about Vivian was ice. Precision, cruelty wrapped in Hermes scarves, and false sympathy. "You'll call me Vivian from now on," her mother said. "We're no longer family. We're business partners. And this," she gestured to the dress, to Sarah, to the farce of a wedding, "this is a transaction." Sarah felt the bile rise in her throat. He's not human. Everyone says he's a monster. That he killed his last. I don't care what he is. Vivian stepped closer. Her perfume, something French and expensive, filled Sarah's lungs like poison. "Listen to me very carefully. Your father left us with nothing. Nothing. Do you understand? This house is mortgaged to the foundation. The bank is circling. We have no assets, no income, no future." It was a lie. Sarah didn't know it yet, but it was a lie. "Lucian Ravencroft owns half of Boston," Vivian continued. Her manicured nails dug into Sarah's shoulders. "He cleared our debt. All of it. He saved us. And all he asked for in return was a companion." "A companion?" Sarah choked out a bitter laugh. "You mean a blood bag. You're sending me there to be bled." Vivian's expression didn't soften. There was no motherly warmth, no tearful goodbye, just cold calculation. The look of a woman who had survived bankruptcy by selling the only asset she had left. Her daughter. "Then bleed," Vivian said. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "Just endure the pain, Serafina. It will hurt for a moment, and then you'll be the queen of Boston's night court. You'll have jewelry, cars, immortality if you play your cards right. Is that not worth a little suffering?" Sarah looked into her mother's eyes, searching, desperately searching for a shred of regret, a flicker of love, anything human. She found nothing. "Just endure it," Vivian repeated. Her hands smoothed the veil over Sarah's face, erasing her, making her invisible. "Don't fight him. Don't scream. It annoys them. Just let it happen. By morning we'll be safe. We, not you. We." The door opened. Jackson, their aging butler, a man so deeply in debt to Vivian, he couldn't leave, cleared his throat. His eyes were kind, apologetic. But his hands were tied just like Sarah's. "The car is here, Mrs. Devereaux," he said quietly. "Mr. Ravencroft's driver is waiting." Sarah felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. This was real. This was happening. She wasn't walking down an aisle. She was walking to the gallows. 8 months earlier, Thomas Devereaux had been alive. Sarah remembered that morning with painful clarity. November 3rd, the leaves outside had turned crimson and gold. Her father had been sitting at the breakfast table reading the Globe, drinking black coffee, his reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked tired, number, exhausted. Dad, Sarah had set down her backpack. She'd been 22, then finishing her last semester at Boston University on a scholarship. Are you okay? Thomas had looked up. His eyes, the same green as hers, had been bloodshot. Worried. I'm fine, sweetheart. But his hands shook as he folded the newspaper. Just some business matters. Nothing for you to worry about. He'd hugged her then, tight, tighter than usual, like he was saying goodbye. That afternoon, Sarah had gone to class, ancient literature. She'd been taking notes on Medea when her phone buzzed. Vivian's bawling, calling. Vivian never called during the day. Come home, now. The line went dead. Sarah had run. She'd left her books, her bag, everything. She'd sprinted through campus, caught the T, pushed through crowds. Her heart hammering the entire time. Something was wrong. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. When she'd burst through the front door, Vivian had been sitting in the parlor. Composed, dry-eyed. A police officer stood beside her, hat in hand. I'm so sorry, miss, the officer had said. Your father passed away this afternoon. Heart attack. The paramedics did everything they could. Heart attack. Thomas Devereaux, 52 years old, healthy, no history of heart disease. No warning signs. Just gone. Sarah had collapsed. The world had tilted and spun and shattered. Her father, her only ally in this cold house. The man who'd read her bedtime stories, who taught her to be kind even when the world wasn't kind back. Dead, and Vivian had sat there like a statue. Perfect posture, perfect hair, not a tear in sight. These things happened, she'd said later after the police left. The doctor said it was quick. He didn't suffer. But something in Sarah's gut had twisted. Something felt wrong. The funeral had been small. Thomas had few friends. Vivian had made sure of that over the years. She'd isolated him, controlled him, turned him into a ghost in his own home. After the burial, Vivian had immediately begun talking about money, about debt, about how the life insurance wouldn't pay out because Thomas had been under investigation for suicide. Suicide. The word had made Sarah physically ill. Your father was depressed, Vivian had explained, her voice flat, clinical. The insurance company thinks he did this to himself. They're denying the claim. We're getting nothing. Worse than nothing, we're drowning in debt. And Sarah had believed her. Why wouldn't she? Vivian was her mother. For 8 months, Sarah had lived in hell. She dropped out of school, took 3 jobs, waitressing at the diner on Cambridge Street, cleaning offices at night, weekend shifts at a bookstore in Harvard Square. She'd sent every penny home, trying to save the house, trying to keep them afloat. All while Vivian complained, this coffee is cold. You forgot to buy the good bread. You're never here. What kind of daughter are you? Sarah had taken it all. The verbal abuse, the blame, the constant reminder that she wasn't enough, could never be enough. Because she thought they were broke. She thought her mother was suffering. She thought they were in this together. She'd been so catastrophically wrong. The Bentley was black, obsidian black, the kind of vehicle that swallowed light. Sarah climbed into the back seat, her dress rustling like funeral shrouds. The leather was butter soft, heated. The interior smelled of expensive cologne and something else, something metallic. Blood. The driver didn't speak. He wore a black suit, sunglasses despite the darkness. His hands on the wheel were steady, inhuman. They pulled away from Marlborough Street. Sarah watched the brownstone disappear in the rearview mirror. Vivian stood on the front steps, watching, not waving, just watching, making sure the product was delivered. The drive took 40 minutes. Out of the city, through winding roads lined with bare trees that looked like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The rain had intensified. It hammered against the windows. The windshield wipers moved in hypnotic rhythm. Swish, swish, swish. Sarah clutched her bouquet, blood-red roses. The thorns had already pierced through her white gloves. She could feel the sting. See the small spots of crimson blooming on the satin. How fitting. She was bleeding before she'd even arrived. The gates appeared suddenly. Wrought iron, 15 feet tall. They opened silently as the Bentley approached. No guard, no intercom, just smooth supernatural efficiency. Beyond the gates, the estate stretched like something out of a Gothic novel. Ravencroft Manor. It wasn't decrepit or crumbling like in the stories. It was pristine, powerful. A sprawling stone mansion with arched windows that glowed with warm light. Gardens even in winter that looked meticulously maintained. This wasn't the lair of a monster. This was the palace of a king. The car stopped at the entrance. The driver opened her door. Sarah stepped out. The air here was different, colder, sharper. It smelled of pine and earth and something ancient, something that predated the city, predated civilization itself. The front doors opened. A man stood there. Not Lucian, someone else. He was tall, silver-haired despite looking only 40, impeccably dressed in a butler's uniform. His eyes were kind, human, tired. "Miss Devereaux," he said with a slight British accent. "Welcome to Ravencroft Manor. My name is Edmund. I'll be seeing to your comfort this evening." Comfort, what a grotesque word. "Where is he?" Sarah's voice came out stronger than she expected. "Where's Lucian Ravencroft?" "Waiting for you in the blue room," Edmund replied. "The ceremony will begin shortly. Please follow me." Sarah had no choice. She followed Edmund through the entrance hall. It was breathtaking. Marble floors, a chandelier made of what looked like actual diamonds, paintings on the walls, old masters, probably originals. The wealth here wasn't just money, it was centuries, dynasties, power that had compounded like interest. They passed through corridors lit by candles, hundreds of them, flickering, casting dancing shadows that looked almost alive. Finally, Edmund stopped at a pair of double doors. "He's inside," Edmund said. Then quieter. "For what it's worth, miss, you're braver than you know." Before Sarah could respond, he opened the doors and retreated. Sarah stepped inside. The blue room was intimate, a private library, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a fireplace with flames crackling orange and gold, Persian rugs, leather chairs. And standing by the window, looking out at the rain-soaked grounds, was Lucian Ravencroft. He didn't turn immediately. Sarah had time to observe. He was tall, easily 6'3", broad shoulders beneath a bespoke black suit. His hair was dark, almost black, swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and aristocratic lines. He looked like he'd been carved from marble. Beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. Dangerous. Precise. When he finally turned, Sarah's breath caught. His eyes were silver, not blue, not gray. Silver, like mercury, like moonlight on steel. They locked onto her with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. "Miss Devereaux." His voice was deep, smooth as expensive bourbon, but underneath there was something else. Power, authority, the kind that made you want to kneel even if every instinct screamed to run. Sarah forced herself to stay standing. "Mr. Ravencroft?" A judge entered from a side door. Judge Cornelius Harrington. Sarah recognized him from the news. He looked terrified. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool room. His hands trembled as he opened a leather-bound book. This wasn't a wedding. It was a binding. Harrington rushed through the ceremony, stumbling over Latin phrases, ancient words that tasted of blood oaths and supernatural contracts. There were no vows of love, no in sickness and in health, just legal jargon and archaic promises. "Do you, Lucian Ravencroft, take this woman as your bound consort?" Lucian's eyes never left Sarah. "I do." "And do you," Harrington's voice cracked, "do you, Seraphina Devereaux, submit yourself to the House of Ravencroft?" Sarah thought of her mother, standing on those steps, cold, unfeeling, just endure the pain. She thought of her father, dead 8 months, buried without justice. She thought of the life she'd never have, the dreams she'd sacrificed, the person she'd been before everything shattered. "I submit," Sarah whispered. The words tasted like ash. Harrington slammed the book shut. He practically ran from the room, leaving behind a signed certificate. Proof of ownership. Proof that Seraphina Devereaux no longer belonged to herself. The door clicked shut. Silence descended. The fire crackled. The rain drummed against the windows. Sarah stood frozen in the center of the room, waiting. Waiting for the attack. Waiting for the pain. Waiting for the fangs. "You're shaking," Lucian said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. "I'm cold," Sarah lied. "No." He stepped closer. "You're terrified." Sarah flinched. Lucian stopped immediately, his brow furrowed, not in anger, in something else. Confusion, concern. He began to circle her, slowly, like a shark, inspecting, assessing. "They dressed you in white," he mused. His voice drifted around her. Symbolic, innocence, purity, a blank canvas for the blood. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. "Please," she whispered, "just get it over with." "Get what over with?" "The feeding, the the claiming, whatever you call it. She looked up at him. Tears blurred her vision. My mother said to endure the pain, so I'm ready. Just do it. Lucian stared at her. For a long moment, the cold mask slipped. Something flickered in those silver eyes, confusion, then anger, not at her, at something else, someone else. Your mother, he repeated slowly, each word deliberate, told you to endure the pain. Yes, he let out a short, dark laugh, bitter, laced with fury. He turned away, gripping the back of a leather chair so hard the material creaked. Come with me, he said abruptly. Where? To the bridal suite. It's time we discuss the reality of your situation. Sarah followed him up the grand staircase. Her legs felt like lead. This was it, the bedroom, the privacy. The moment when the facade ended and the horror began. The bridal suite was enormous. A four-poster bed dominated the space. Black silk sheets, candles everywhere, fresh flowers, lilies, white lilies, funeral flowers. Lucian closed the door behind them, locked it. The sound made Sarah jump. She backed away until her legs hit the bed. She sat clutching the duvet, bracing herself. Lucian removed his jacket, tossed it onto a chair, loosened his tie. He walked toward her. Sarah tilted her head to the side, exposing her neck, just like she'd practiced in the mirror. The jugular. Vivian had been specific. Give him the jugular, it's faster. Sarah closed her eyes, waited for the bite. Instead, she felt his hand, cool fingers, not freezing, just slightly cooler than human. They touched her chin, gently, tilting her head back up, forcing her to look at him. Serafina, he said. His voice had dropped. Dangerous, quiet. Open your eyes. She did. Lucian was leaning over her. His hands rested on the bed on either side of her hips, trapping her. But his mouth was closed. No fangs, no hunger in his expression, just intensity. Who told you there was a debt? He asked. Sarah blinked. What? The debt, Lucian repeated. His eyes burned into hers. The reason you're here. Who told you your father owed me money? My mother. She showed me the papers, the bank notices. She said you bought the debt and the price was me. Lucian pushed himself off the bed. He began to pace, running a hand through his dark hair. He looked furious. Not at her, never at her, at Vivian. Lies, he growled. What? Lucian stopped pacing, turned to face her. I did not buy your father's debt, Serafina. Your father died with a surplus. He had a life insurance policy worth $10 million. The words didn't make sense. 10 million. Sarah shook her head. That's impossible. We've been living on scraps. Mother said the insurance didn't pay out because it was suicide. It wasn't suicide, Lucian's voice was steel. It was a heart attack, and the insurance paid out 3 days after the funeral. He walked to a safe hidden behind a painting on the wall, an original Monet. He spun the dial, opened it, pulled out a thick manila folder. He tossed it onto the bed beside her. Read it. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the folder. The first document was a bank transfer receipt. $10 million, deposited into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The account holder's name, Vivian Devereaux. Sarah's vision blurred. She flipped to the next page. A contract between Vivian Devereaux and Lucian Ravencroft. In exchange for an additional sum of $3 million and entry into the Night Council Society, Vivian Devereaux agrees to transfer guardianship and ownership of her daughter Serafina Devereaux to Lucian Ravencroft for the purpose of blood binding. The word swam. Ownership. Transfer. $3 million. Additional. She sold me, Sarah whispered. The room tilted. The floor seemed to fall away. She didn't save me. She sold me. She didn't just sell you, Lucian said. He crouched down, eye level with her. She negotiated. I originally offered $1.5 million. She said you were young and compliant and worth at least $3 million. The scream built in Sarah's chest, but it wouldn't come out. She felt sick, dizzy, all those months, all those laws, the exhaustion, the verbal abuse, the guilt. And Vivian had been rich. She'd stolen Sarah's inheritance, then sold Sarah to double her fortune. Why? Sarah looked at Lucian. Tears finally spilled over. Why did you agree to it? If you're not a monster, why did you buy a person? Lucian's expression darkened. Because if I didn't buy you, Darius would have. Sarah froze. Darius? My brother, Lucian said, his jaw tightened, and he has been exiled from the High Council for what he does to his brides. If your mother had taken you to him, you wouldn't be sitting here. You'd be dead by sunrise. He stood, offered her a handkerchief from his pocket. I bought you to keep you out of the market, Serafina. I have no intention of biting you. I have no intention of forcing myself on you in any way. He walked to the door. You'll sleep in the bed. I'll sleep in the study. Tomorrow we start planning. Planning what? Sarah's voice was small, broken. Lucian turned back. For the first time, a dangerous smile curved his lips. Not cruel, not monstrous. The smile of an avenging angel. Your mother told you to endure the pain, he said quietly. I think it's time we return the favor. We're going to make Vivian Devereaux suffer. Morning came too soon. Sarah woke with a gasp. Her hand flew to her neck. Smooth skin, no puncture marks, no blood. She sat up. The bridal suite was empty. Sunlight filtered through the heavy curtains, painting stripes across the black silk sheets. She'd survived. The realization hit her like a wave. She'd survived the night. Lucian hadn't touched her, hadn't hurt her. He'd given her the truth instead, the horrible, devastating truth. Sarah swung her legs out of bed. On the vanity where she'd expected a note of dismissal, there was instead a black credit card. Titanium, heavy, and a single handwritten note in elegant script. Buy something that looks like revenge. Breakfast is at 9. Else Sarah dressed quickly in the clothes she'd arrived in. They felt like a costume from a past life. She made her way downstairs following the scent of coffee and something else. Bacon, actual food. She found Lucian in the sunroom, a glass-walled space filled with ferns and orchids. He sat at a small wrought iron table reading the Wall Street Journal. A delicate porcelain cup sat beside him. I thought vampires burned in the sun, Sarah said, stepping into the room. Lucian didn't look up. A myth we perpetuate to keep the tourists away from our beaches. Sit. Sarah sat. A woman appeared. Not Edmund. Someone new. Older. 60s. British accent. Perfectly pressed uniform. Good morning, dear, the woman said warmly. I'm Mrs. Beatrice Whitmore. I manage the household. What would you like for breakfast? The kindness in her voice nearly broke Sarah. Just toast, please. Nonsense. You're skin and bones. I'll bring you the full spread. Mrs. Whitmore disappeared. Sarah stared at the table, at Lucian, at his cup. The liquid inside wasn't coffee. It was thick, crimson. The scent of iron hung in the air. So, Sarah started. Her voice shook slightly, but gained strength. What's the plan? How do we make her suffer? Lucian folded his newspaper, set it down. He looked impeccable, rested, dangerous. Your mother craves two things, he said. Status and validation. She sold you to get into the Night Council, the inner circle of Boston's elite, supernatural and human alliances. She wants to be Queen Bee. And you're going to stop her? No. Lucian smiled, that razor-sharp expression. I'm going to let her in, and you are going to humiliate her. I don't know how to do that. I'm just Sarah. I'm the girl who couldn't even pay her own tuition. Not anymore. Lucian leaned forward. You are now the matriarch of the Ravencroft estate. You have access to resources your mother could only dream of. The council's induction gala is in 3 weeks. Vivian will be there, expecting to see a broken, traumatized girl she can pity in public to gain sympathy. He paused. If you walk in there with your head down, she wins. If you walk in there looking like you own the place, in her you destroy her narrative. Sarah's heart hammered. 3 weeks. She had 3 weeks to transform from victim to queen. Then we'd better get started, she said. Lucian's smile widened. That's my girl. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the gardens gold. And for the first time in 8 months, Seraphina Devereaux felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. But she didn't know, couldn't know, that in 3 weeks everything would culminate in fire and blood, that her mother would scream her name in front of Boston's elite, that she'd stand in a warehouse with a knife in her hand, making the choice between mercy and vengeance. The story was just beginning. And the real lessons were about to start. 3 weeks can change everything. 3 weeks ago, Seraphina Devereaux had been a waitress. Invisible, disposable, worth nothing to the woman who gave birth to her. But today she was learning to become a queen. The library at Ravencroft Manor smelled of old leather and possibility. Sarah sat at the mahogany desk surrounded by books that cost more than most people's cars. Vampire politics, supernatural hierarchies, the intricate web of alliances that governed Boston's night world. Mrs. Beatrice Whitmore stood beside her silver tea service gleaming on the tray. Posture, dear, Mrs. Whitmore said gently. Shoulders back, chin level. Never apologize with your body. Sarah straightened. Her back ached. They'd been at this for hours. Why does any of this matter? Sarah asked, frustration creeping into her voice. I'm not really one of them. I'm just... You are Lady Ravencroft. Miss Whitmore's tone was firm but kind, whether you feel it or not. And in 2 weeks, you'll walk into that ballroom and prove it. Not for them, for yourself. Sarah looked down at her hands, still rough from years of scrubbing dishes. The manicure they'd given her yesterday couldn't erase the calluses, the evidence of the life she'd lived. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Mrs. Whitmore set down the teapot, pulled up a chair, sat beside Sarah like an equal, not a servant. May I tell you something, dear? Sarah nodded. I've worked for the Ravencroft family for 30 years, Mrs. Whitmore said. I've seen Lucian bring home dozens of guests, business associates, politicians, even a few royals. Not once, not in 3 decades, have I seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Sarah's breath caught. He doesn't look at me any special way. Oh, but he does, Mrs. Whitmore smiled. Like you're the first sunrise he's seen in 400 years. Like you matter. Not because of what you can give him, but because of who you are. She patted Sarah's hand. Your mother was wrong about you, Seraphina. You're not worthless. You're extraordinary. And by the time the gala is over, everyone will know it. The days blurred together in a rhythm of transformation. Mornings with Mrs. Whitmore, learning etiquette, how to hold a teacup, how to navigate social hierarchies, the difference between a viscountess and a duchess, which fork to use for oysters. Afternoons in the library, reading, absorbing, understanding the supernatural world she'd married into. Evenings with Lucian. He taught her after sunset, when his power was at its peak. They didn't train in combat. Sarah wasn't a fighter, but she was smart, observant, empathetic. And Lucian showed her how to weaponize those gifts. Watch their hands, he instructed one night. They stood in the portrait gallery. Paintings of Ravencroft ancestors stared down at them. When someone lies, they touch their face, their throat. They fidget. He demonstrated, touching his collar. When someone's afraid their pupils dilate, they lean back, create distance. What about when they're telling the truth, Sarah asked. Eye contact, stillness. They don't need to convince you. The truth holds its own weight. Sarah practiced. She watched Edmund negotiate with vendors, observed Mrs. Whitmore managing staff, studied the way power flowed through simple interactions. One evening, she found herself in Lucian's study. He was at his desk, working through contracts, legal documents for Cross Industries, his corporation, the legitimate face of his empire. Can I ask you something? Sarah said from the doorway. Lucian looked up. Always. Why did you really buy me? The question hung between them. Lucian set down his pen, leaned back in his chair. The truth, please. Because I saw the listing your mother put out, he said quietly, through the broker channels. And the description she wrote made my blood run cold. He stood, walked to the window. She listed you like livestock. 23, compliant, childless, no family ties. Perfect for feeding or binding. She sent photos, medical records, your school transcripts, like you were a product. Sarah felt sick. I knew Darius would bid, Lucian continued. He's been looking for someone like you for years. Young, kind, easy to break. So I outbid him, immediately. Shut down the auction before it could start. He turned to face her. I bought you because the alternative was leaving you to him. And I wouldn't. You saved me, Sarah whispered. No. Lucian's eyes met hers. I gave you a choice. What you do with it, that's up to you. 2 weeks into her transformation, Sarah made a discovery. She was exploring the manor. Mrs. Whitmore had encouraged it. Know your home, dear. Every corridor, every room. A queen knows her castle. Sarah found herself in the East Wing, an older section. The wallpaper here was Victorian, faded burgundy with gold filigree. The air smelled of dust and time. One door stood slightly ajar. Sarah pushed it open. Inside was a bedroom, frozen in time. A child's room, pink curtains, a canopy bed, toys on shelves, a rocking horse in the corner. But everything was covered in dust, untouched for decades. On the nightstand, a photograph in a silver frame. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, dark hair, silver eyes, smiling at the camera, and behind her a younger Lucian, his hand on her shoulder, love evident in every line of his face. Her name was Isabella. Sarah spun around. Lucian stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry, Sarah stammered. I didn't mean to intrude. It's your home now. You can go anywhere. He stepped into the room, looked around like he was seeing ghosts. She was my daughter, 200 years ago. Sarah's heart clenched. What happened to her scarlet fever? Lucian's voice was hollow. I could survive plagues, wars, centuries of death, but I couldn't save her. She was human. Her mother was human, and I watched them both die within a year of each other. He picked up the photograph, traced the frame with his thumb. I swore after that I'd never care for another mortal. It's too painful. They burn so bright, then they're gone. He set the photo down, looked at Sarah. But then you arrived, and you reminded me what it feels like to want to protect someone, not because you own them, but because they matter. Sarah stepped closer. I'm sorry you lost them. So am I. They stood together in that frozen room, two people drowning in grief, finding air in each other. Lucian cleared his throat, stepped back. The vulnerability shuddered behind his mask. The gala is in 1 week. We should finalize your wardrobe. But as he left, Sarah saw it, the crack in his armor, and she understood something crucial. Lucian Ravencroft wasn't just a vampire king. He was a man who'd learned to survive by not feeling, and she was teaching him to feel again. Week 3 arrived like a storm. The day before the gala, Edmund delivered a message. Mr. Darius Ravencroft is here to see you, sir. He's waiting in the rose garden. Lucian's expression darkened immediately. Tell him I'm not available. He says it's urgent, regarding council business. Lucian exchanged a glance with Sarah. Stay inside, he commanded. But Sarah followed anyway, keeping to the shadows of the veranda, where she could see but not be seen. Darius stood among the roses, looking entirely out of place, like a wolf in a flower shop. He looked like a distorted mirror image of Lucian. Where Lucian was polished marble, Darius was jagged obsidian, same height, same build. But everything about him was wrong. His hair was longer, unkempt, his clothes expensive but disheveled, a leather jacket over a torn designer shirt, and his eyes, silver like Lucian's, but fevered, hungry, wild. What do you want? Lucian's voice carried across the garden. Just checking on my dear brother, Darius said. His smile was all teeth. Making sure domestic life suits you. I heard you've been playing house with Vivian's little pet. She has a name. Does she? Darius plucked a rose, crushed it in his fist. Petals fell like blood drops. I've been doing some research, Lucian, about your bride. Did you know she was supposed to be mine? Sarah's blood turned to ice. Vivian came to me first, Darius continued, 8 months ago, right after Thomas died. She needed money, fast. She offered me Seraphina, $2 million. I was prepared to pay it. Then why didn't you? Because someone leaked the auction to the council. Suddenly there were rules, oversight. Magistrate Greystone got involved, said all transactions had to go through official channels. Darius's eyes glittered with malice. You did that. Didn't you, brother? You tipped them off, so you could swoop in and steal my prize. I didn't steal anything, Lucian said coldly. I saved her from you. Saved? Darius laughed. Is that what you call it? How noble. And here I thought you just wanted to fuck her. The air pressure changed. Lucian moved so fast Sarah barely saw it. One moment standing 5 feet away. The next he had Darius by the throat, lifted off the ground. Speak about her again. Lucian's voice was death itself, and I will end you, brother or not. Darius wheezed, but he was still smiling. There it is, he gasped. Proof you care about her, which means I can hurt you through her. Lucian dropped him. Darius landed on his feet, straightened his jacket. See you at the gala, brother. I'm looking forward to meeting your bride, properly. He left. Lucian stood alone in the garden, fists clenched, Shimar sweating. Sarah stepped out from the shadows. He's going to try something, she said. Yes. At the gala. Yes. Then we need to be ready. Lucian looked at her. You're not afraid? I'm terrified, Sarah admitted, but I'm more angry than afraid. And anger. Anger I can use. The night of the gala arrived. Sarah stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom. But the reflection staring back wasn't the girl from 3 weeks ago. The dress was crimson. Blood red Valentino, strapless, form-fitting through the bodice, then flowing into a train that looked like liquid rubies. Mrs. Whitmore had helped her into it, zipped it with careful hands. You look like a queen, Mrs. Whitmore whispered. Around Sarah's neck, the Ravencroft diamonds, a choker of stones so clear they looked like frozen tears, each one worth more than the brownstone on Marlborough Street. Her hair swept up, elegant, severe, makeup subtle but devastating. Red lips, smoky eyes. She looked powerful. She looked expensive. She looked nothing like the girl Vivian had sold. A knock at the door. Lucian entered. He stopped, stared. Serafina, just her name, but the way he said it, like a prayer, like a curse. He was in a tuxedo, black on black, perfect lines. But it was his eyes that held her, silver and burning. You're magnificent. I'm terrified, Sarah admitted again. Good. He stepped closer, offered his arm. Terror means you're still human, still alive. Hold on to that. They walked down the staircase together. Edmund waited at the door, his eyes bright with emotion. You'll knock them dead, miss. Let's hope not literally, Sarah murmured. The Bentley was waiting, but tonight Lucian drove. Just the two of them. As they pulled away from Ravencroft Manor, Sarah looked back. Mrs. Whitmore stood at the window, watching, like a mother sending her daughter to war. The Crimson Ballroom was housed in a historic building in Back Bay. From the outside, it looked like any other brownstone. But inside existed a world most humans never saw. The supernatural elite of Boston, vampires in tuxedos, werewolves uncomfortable in formal wear, witches with jewels woven into their hair, and humans. The ones wealthy or connected enough to know the truth, to trade with monsters. Sarah and Lucian arrived fashionably late. The red carpet was literal, crimson velvet. Photographers lined both sides. But these weren't TMZ. They documented the hierarchy, the power structure. For archives kept in vaults beneath the city. Lucian stepped out first, buttoned his tuxedo jacket, then offered his hand to Sarah. She took it, stepped into the flash of cameras, into the chaos. A hush fell. The Vampire King hadn't been seen with a consort in 50 years. Sarah kept her chin high, her face a mask of bored elegance, just like Lucian had taught her. They walked up the steps, ignoring shouted questions. Who is she? Where did she come from? Is this a political alliance? Inside the ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, walls draped in silk. The air smelled of expensive perfume and something metallic. Blood wine served in crystal flutes. Legal. Sourced from willing donors. Sarah scanned the crowd and saw her. Vivienne Devereaux stood near the champagne fountain, holding court. She wore silver, a gown that made her look like a shimmering icicle, diamonds at her throat, her hair perfect, her laugh bright. She looked radiant. She looked rich. She looked like she was celebrating. Sarah felt heat rise in her chest. Vivienne spotted them. Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, then widened into plastic perfection. She excused herself from her admirers, glided toward them. Serafina, Lucian. Vivienne beamed, reached out to grab Sarah's hands. Darling, you look like you've survived. Her hands were cold, clammy. Sarah didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back. Her hands remained limp, dead things. Mother, Sarah said. The word tasted like poison. Oh, look at you. Vivienne's voice dripped false concern, playing to the audience forming around them. I was so worried, darling. The first few weeks can be so taxing. She leaned in, lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Did you behave? Did you endure it? Sarah pulled her hands away, slowly, like touching something sticky. She looked Vivienne up and down, a slow, appraising glance, the kind Lucian had taught her. Endure it, Sarah laughed, light, airy, not reaching her eyes. Mother, why would I endure pleasure? Vivienne's face froze. Excuse me. Sarah stepped closer, invading Vivienne's personal space. You made it sound like torture. You didn't tell me Lucian was so generous. She touched the diamond choker at her throat. He gave me the Ravencroft diamonds this morning, just as a thank you for last night. Vivienne's eyes locked onto the necklace. Greed flashed openly across her face. She knew exactly what those stones were worth. He gave you those, of course. Lucian stepped up beside Sarah, wrapped a possessive arm around her waist. Serafina is a natural, Vivienne. You underestimated her. She wasn't made to be a victim. She was made to be a queen. Vivienne looked between them, confused. This wasn't the script. Sarah was supposed to be weeping, broken, begging to come home so Vivienne could play savior. Well, Vivienne stammered, recovering her composure. I'm just glad the arrangement is working out. Speaking of which, Lucian, the induction ceremony is in an hour. My sponsorship is secured. We'll see, Lucian said dismissively. Serafina, would you like to dance? I'd love to. They left Vivienne standing there, mouth slightly open, surrounded by witnesses who'd heard every word. On the dance floor, Lucian pulled Sarah close. The music was a slow waltz, haunting. You did well, he murmured against her ear. She looked at the necklace like she wanted to rip it off my neck. She probably does, but the night isn't over. Lucian's hand tightened on her waist. Look, 3 o'clock. Sarah turned her head slightly. Darius leaned against a pillar, watching them. He wasn't smiling. He was talking to a man in a dark gray suit. Distinguished. 50s, wire-rimmed glasses. Who is that? Sarah asked. Lucian's muscles tensed. Dr. Cassius Thorne, the finest toxicologist in the supernatural world, and the man who signed your father's death certificate. Sarah missed a step. Lucian corrected her instantly, kept them moving. My father's death certificate, Sarah hissed. Heart attack, officially. But Thorne doesn't deal in heart attacks. He deals in poisons that mimic them. The ballroom spun. You think she killed him? For the insurance money? I think, Lucian said, spinning her so she faced away from Darius. $10 million is a lot of money for a woman like Vivian. And I think she didn't work alone. The pieces clicked into place. Darius talking to the doctor. Vivian's wealth, the timeline. Darius and my mother, Sarah realized, they've been working together for at least 2 years, since before your father died. Sarah stopped dancing. They were in the middle of the floor, people watching, but she couldn't move. She killed him, she whispered, horror vibrating in her voice. She killed my father to get the money, and when she spent it all, she sold me to get more. Keep dancing, Lucian commanded, his voice sharp. Do not let them see you break. If you break now, they win. Sarah forced her feet to move. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I want to destroy her, she said, the words tasting like copper. Good, Lucian said. Hold on to that, because the induction ceremony is starting, and we're going to object. The music stopped. A gong sounded, vibrating through the floorboards. The crowd parted, a stage at the front of the room. The High Council gathering. 5 figures in ceremonial robes, ancient, powerful. At the center, Magistrate Ashford Greystone. He looked like he'd been carved from driftwood. Weathered, unyielding. Vivian walked toward the stage, head held high. This was her moment. Everything she'd sold her soul for. Lucian took Sarah's hand. Are you ready to burn her world down? Sarah looked at her mother, then at Darius, then up at Lucian. Hand me the match. The ceremony began. Magistrate Greystone's voice boomed without a microphone. Vivian Devereaux, you have petitioned the Night Council for entry. You have provided the requisite tithe. You have offered a blood-bound consort to the House of Ravencroft. Do you swear loyalty to the council? I swear it, Vivian said, her voice trembling with eager ambition. Then by the power vested in me, I object. The words were spoken softly, but they cut through the room like a guillotine blade. Lucian Ravencroft stepped forward, Sarah's hand firmly in his. The crowd gasped, parted like the Red Sea, creating an aisle between them and the stage. Vivian whipped around, eyes widening. Lucian, what is the meaning of this? You agreed. I agreed to accept Seraphina, Lucian said, his voice calm, deadly. I did not agree to let a murderer sit at my table. The word hung in the air. Murderer. Magistrate Greystone frowned. These are grave accusations, Ravencroft. You speak of the death of her husband. We determined that was irrelevant to council business. Not irrelevant, Lucian corrected. He reached into his tuxedo jacket, pulled out documents. Murder, premeditated, executed with Nightsbane toxin. A ripple of shock went through the room. Nightsbane was controlled, illegal for humans to possess. Only council assassins had access. That's a lie, Vivian shrieked, her composure shattering. He's lying. He's trying to cheat me out of my seat. Seraphina, tell them. Tell them how much I loved your father. Sarah let go of Lucian's hand. She felt every eye in the room on her. This was the moment. The script Vivian had written called for obedient victim. Sarah tore the script apart. She walked forward until she stood at the base of the stage, looking up at her mother. You didn't love him, Sarah said, her voice steady, amplified by the ballroom's acoustics. You loved the life he gave you. And when the money ran out, you liquidated him like an asset. Seraphina, Vivian's face contorted, rage replacing the mask. I did everything for you. I sold the house. I begged. I borrowed. You didn't borrow, Sarah interrupted. You poisoned him. Lucian has the bank records. $10 million, transferred the day after the funeral. And we know about Dr. Thorne. At the mention of the doctor, Vivian went pale. She stumbled back a step. Lucian threw the folder onto the stage. It slid across the floor, stopped at Magistrate Greystone's feet. Toxicology report, Lucian announced, signed by Dr. Cassius Thorne himself. who under significant pressure from my security team an hour ago admitted to selling Mrs. Devereaux the toxin. Greystone picked up the folder, read the first page, then the second. His expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. He looked up at Vivian. Is this true? It was Mercy. Vivian stammered, tears streaming. Fake, calculated. He was depressed. He wanted to die. I just helped him. You helped him die, Greystone said, and then you sold his daughter to a vampire to cover your tracks and buy your way into power. He snapped his fingers. 2 guards stepped out from the shadows. Massive, dark suits. No! Vivian screamed as they grabbed her arms. Darius, help me! You promised! The room went deadly silent. Every head turned. Sarah's heart stopped. She looked around frantically. Darius stepped out from behind a pillar, glass of wine in hand. He looked bored. I promised I'd get you an audience, Maggie, he said. I didn't promise I'd save you from your own stupidity. Vivian screamed, raw, animalistic. The guards dragged her off the stage. She kicked, thrashed, her silver heels scraping the marble. As they hauled her past Sarah, she lunged, nails swiping the air inches from Sarah's face. You ungrateful little wretch, Vivian spat. I should have suffocated you in your crib. Sarah didn't flinch. She watched her mother disappear through the back doors. Lucian stepped up beside her, placed a hand on her shoulder. It's done. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Will they kill her? No, Lucian said quietly. Death is too easy. She'll be exiled to the gray zones. No money, no status. She'll have to work for every meal. For a woman like Vivian, that's a fate worse than death. The music restarted, hesitant, the tension breaking. Sarah felt exhaustion hit her like a wave. I want to go home. We'll leave immediately. But as they turned, Sarah caught sight of Darius again. He was raising his glass to her, a mocking salute. And for the first time, Sarah noticed. The man standing next to him wasn't Dr. Thorne. It was Judge Harrington, the frantic judge from her wedding. And Harrington looked terrified. A chill crawled up Sarah's spine. The victory felt complete. But why was Darius smiling? They made it to the lobby, Lucian's hand firm on Sarah's back, guiding her through the crowd. The Bentley was waiting outside, engine running. They were 10 feet from the door when it happened. A hand grabbed Sarah's arm. She spun. Darius stood there, too close, his eyes wild. Leaving so soon, sister. He smiled. But we haven't had our dance yet. Let her go, Lucian warned. Or what? You'll make a scene at Greystone's gala. You just publicly destroyed a woman. I don't think you want more attention tonight. His grip tightened on Sarah's wrist. One dance, Serafina. That's all I ask, then you can run back to my brother's bed. I said, let her go. Lucian's voice had changed, lower, vibrating with something inhuman. Security was moving toward them, but not fast enough. Darius leaned in, whispered in Sarah's ear, Your mother and I had such plans for you. It's a shame Lucian ruined them, but don't worry, I'll get you back, one way or another. He released her wrist, stepped back, smiled at Lucian. See you soon, brother. Then he was gone. Lucian pulled Sarah toward the exit. They practically ran to the car. Edmund was driving tonight. He pulled away from the curb the moment they were inside. Are you hurt? Lucian asked, examining her wrist. Already bruising. I'm fine. He touched you. I'm fine, Sarah repeated. But she was shaking. They drove in silence, out of the city, into the darkness. The rain had returned, harder than before. It lashed against the windows. The world outside a blur. They were on the forest road, 5 miles from home, when the car swerved violently. Hold on, Edmund shouted. A gunshot. The front tire exploded. The Bentley skidded, spinning, out of control. Sarah screamed as the world tumbled. They slammed into the guardrail, metal shrieking, then stopped. Silence, broken only by the hiss of the radiator, the drumming rain. Serafina, Lucian's voice, urgent. Are you hurt? I think I'm okay. Stay down. The driver's door was ripped open, not opened, ripped. The steel groaned, snapped. A dark figure dragged Edmund out, threw him into the woods like a rag doll. Come out, brother, Darius's voice roared over the storm. Let's finish what we started 200 years ago. Lucian looked at Sarah. Lock the doors. Do not open them for anyone but me. Lucian, don't. He was gone. Sarah scrambled to the window, wiping condensation. Outside in the headlights of the wrecked car, she saw them. Lucian and Darius collided with the force of freight trains. It wasn't a human fight. It was supernatural speed, strength. Trees splintered where they landed. The pavement cracked under their boots. Darius was laughing. He fought dirty, a silver chain wrapped around his fist. He struck Lucian across the face. The silver burning, smoking. Lucian roared, grabbed Darius by the throat, slammed him into the hood of the car. Metal buckled. You think you've won because you got rid of the old hag? Darius spat, blood running down his chin. She was just a distraction. I needed you at the gala so my men could prep. Prep what? The house is rigged, but I didn't want the house. I wanted the girl. A shattering sound behind Sarah. She spun. The rear window exploded inward. A gloved hand reached in. Unlocking the door, two men in tactical gear dragged her out before she could scream. Lucian, Sarah shrieked, kicking, clawing. She raked her nails across one man's face, drawing blood. Lucian turned, eyes widening in horror. Serafina. He let go of Darius, lunged toward her. That was his mistake. Darius produced a stake, jagged, electrified steel, drove it into Lucian's back. Lucian crumpled to his knees, a cry of agony tearing from his throat, electricity surging through him, paralyzing. He reached out a hand towards Sarah, fingers clawing at wet asphalt. No, Sarah screamed. Let him go. Leave him alone. Darius walked over to Lucian, panting. He kicked Lucian in the ribs, flipping him over. Lucian groaned, his healing factor fighting the current, but he couldn't move. Take her, Darius ordered the mercenaries. Where, one asked, struggling to hold Sarah. To the warehouse. It's time the new Mrs. Ravencroft learned what a real wedding night looks like. He leaned down to Lucian's ear. Don't worry, brother. I won't kill her. I'm just going to break her. And when she's begging for death, I'll send her back to you. I will kill you, Lucian whispered, blood bubbling past his lips. You'll try, Darius said. He turned to the men. Knock her out. She's too loud. One mercenary raised the butt of his rifle. Sarah saw the blow coming. She saw Lucian's desperate, burning eyes. I'm sorry, she mouthed. Then darkness took her. And the last thing she heard was Lucian screaming her name. Into the rain, into the night, into the void. Consciousness returned with the smell of rust and damp earth. Serafina Devereaux opened her eyes. The world swam into focus. Gray concrete, high broken windows, dawn light filtering through in weak watery streams. Her head throbbed, a bass drum of pain keeping time with her pulse. She was seated in a wooden chair, her wrists bound behind her with zip ties that bit into skin, her ankles secured to the chair legs. The crimson gown from the gala was torn. Dirty, the Ravencroft diamonds gone from her throat, stripped of everything again. The space around her was cavernous, an abandoned warehouse. Rusted machinery lurked in corners like sleeping beasts. The floor was stained with things Sarah didn't want to identify. She tested the bindings, tight, professional. Fear crawled up her spine like frost. Finally, the voice echoed from the shadows. Darius emerged, dragging a metal stool. He sat directly in front of her, close enough that his knees almost touched hers. He'd cleaned the blood from his face, but the bruise where Lucian had struck him was darkening to violent purple. His eyes glittered with fever, with madness. I was beginning to think the mercenary hit you too hard, Darius said. Brain damage is so unattractive. Sarah's throat felt like sandpaper. Where is he? Lucian, Darius smirked, pulled out a silver cigarette case. Rotting on the side of Route 99. The electric stake I used fried his nervous system. Even an ancient needs hours to recover. By the time he can move a finger, I'll have finished with you. He lit a cigarette. The flame illuminated the madness in his eyes. You're lying, Sarah whispered. He's alive. He's coming. Oh, he's alive. For now, but coming. Darius blew smoke into her face. Sweetheart, he can't even crawl. Sarah's heart hammered. She forced herself to breathe, to think. Lucian had taught her. 3 weeks of lessons. Watch their hands. When someone lies, they fidget. Darius's hand was steady, holding the cigarette with practiced ease. He was telling the truth. Lucian was paralyzed, helpless. She was alone. Why are you doing this? Sarah asked, keeping her voice level, steady. Is it just jealousy? Do you want his title, his money? Darius laughed, stood, began to pace. Titles are boring. Money is easy. He gestured with the cigarette. No, Serafina. It's about taking. Lucian has always been the good son, the moral one, the one who protects the cattle instead of eating them. He stopped, leaned down, close enough that she could smell the tobacco and something underneath. Something sour, sick. I want to show him that everything he loves can be broken. And you He touched her cheek with cold fingers. You are the perfect weapon. He cares about you. I smelled it on him. He didn't just buy you, he respects you. That makes you valuable. Darius walked to a workbench, covered in tools, hammers, pliers, knives. He picked up a long, thin blade, tested the edge against his thumb. We're going to play a game, he said. I'm going to make a cut for every year Lucian has been king. Let's see how many you can take before you beg me to turn you. Sarah's mind raced. She thought of Mrs. Whitmore. Never apologize with your body, she thought of Lucian. The truth holds its own weight. She looked past Darius, to the left, near a pile of rotting crates. A shadow moved, too deliberate to be a rat. Someone was there. Sarah needed to buy time. You hate him that much, she asked. After 200 years? Darius turned back, surprised. You want to talk now? I want to understand. Sarah kept her eyes on his. Why you're willing to destroy your own brother? Something flickered across Darius's face. Pain, buried deep, ancient. He took everything from me, Darius said, his voice dropping. 200 years ago, I loved a woman. Elena. She was human, beautiful, kind, and Lucian killed her. Sarah blinked. He told me he lost a daughter. He never mentioned. Of course he didn't. Darius's laugh was bitter, broken. Elena was accused of being a spy, working for the vampire hunters. Lucian was on the council. He voted to execute her. I begged him, pleaded, told him she was innocent. He didn't listen. He walked to the window, stared out at the gray dawn. They burned her alive. I watched. And when I tried to stop it, Lucian held me back, said it was for the greater good. For a moment, Sarah saw it. The man beneath the monster. Someone who'd loved, lost, broken. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't. Darius's voice hardened. Don't pity me. I don't want pity. I want revenge. And you're how I get it. He turned back, the blade gleaming. Let's start with that pretty face. He raised the knife. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, braced herself. Crash. The skylight above them shattered. A blur of darkness plummeted from the ceiling, landing in a crouch between Sarah and Darius. The concrete floor cracked under the impact. Dust billowed. Impossible, Darius whispered. Lucian Ravencroft slowly rose from the crouch. He looked terrifying. His tuxedo was shredded, his shirt stained with mud and black blood, his skin pale as death, veins pulsing black beneath his eyes. He didn't look like a gentleman anymore. He looked like a predator that had crawled out of hell. I told you. Lucian's voice was a guttural growl that seemed to vibrate the very foundations of the building. I will kill you. Darius stumbled back, dropping the knife. You should be paralyzed. I fed, Lucian said simply. He didn't elaborate, but the fresh blood staining his lips told the story. He'd done what was necessary. Drained someone or something to heal. To get to her, Darius snarled, his shock replaced by feral rage. You think feeding makes you strong enough? I'm younger, faster, but I'm angrier. They collided. The fight was nothing like the one on the road. This was close quarters, brutal, visceral. Lucian caught Darius's punch in his open palm. The sound of bone meeting flesh echoed like a gunshot. He twisted Darius's arm. The snap of the radius echoed. Darius screamed, kicked out, caught Lucian in the stomach. Lucian crashed into the workbench. Tools clattered to the floor. Darius scrambled for a weapon, a heavy wrench, swung it at Lucian's head. Lucian ducked. The wrench smashed into the concrete wall. Sparks flew. They were moving too fast for Sarah to follow. Blurs of shadow and fury. She twisted her wrists against the zip ties. Ignoring the skin tearing, the plastic loosened, slightly. Come on, Lucian tackled Darius. They crashed through a wooden partition, rolled into the open space. A tangle of limbs and teeth. Darius was younger, faster. But Lucian was fighting with the desperation of a man who'd already lost everything once. He wouldn't lose her. But Darius had one more trick. As Lucian pinned him, Darius reached into his boot, pulled out a remote detonator. Get off me, Darius screamed, his thumb hovering over the button. Or I blow the support pillars. The whole roof comes down. She dies too. Lucian froze, his hand around Darius's throat, claws digging in, but he didn't squeeze. He looked at Sarah, bound in the chair 20 feet away. Let me go, Darius wheezed, blood-tinged grin spreading across his face. Let me walk out, and I don't bury your bride. Lucian's shoulders slumped. He began to lift his hand from Darius's throat. Number. Sarah's wrists finally popped free. The zip tie snapped. She didn't hesitate, didn't think. She grabbed the knife Darius had dropped. The one meant for her face. Lucian ducked. Lucian dropped flat without looking. Sarah threw the knife. She'd never thrown a knife in her life. But adrenaline is a powerful teacher. The blade tumbled through the air. It didn't hit Darius in the heart or the head. It slammed into his hand, the hand holding the detonator. Darius shrieked. The detonator clattered across the floor, sliding out of reach. Lucian didn't waste the second chance. He lunged, not to capture, to end it. He grabbed Darius by the jacket, lifted him, threw him. Darius flew across the room, crashed through the rusted railing of a catwalk. An open elevator shaft yawned below, plunging into darkness, into the flooded basement stories below. Darius flailed, fingers scrabbling against the edge. "Brother, help me!" Lucian walked to the edge slowly, deliberately. He looked down at the brother who had tormented him for a century. The brother who had threatened the only light he'd found in decades. "The brother you knew died 200 years ago," Lucian said coldly. He stepped on Darius's fingers. Darius fell. His scream echoed down the shaft, fading into a wet, heavy splash far below. Then, silence. Lucian stood there, chest heaving, staring into the darkness. Then he turned, ran to Sarah. "Serafina." He fell to his knees beside her chair, his hands trembling as he pulled a knife from his boot. "Cut the ropes binding her legs. Did he hurt you? Tell me he didn't touch you." Sarah looked at him, saw the fear in his eyes. Not fear of Darius, but fear of losing her. "I'm okay," she whispered, though she was shaking violently, adrenaline fading. "You came back. I will always come back." Lucian swore. He pulled her into his arms, held her so tightly it almost hurt. Sarah buried her face in his ruined shirt, smelling blood and rain and the scent that was distinctly him. "I'm sorry," Lucian murmured against her hair. "I promised to protect you, and I failed." Sarah pulled back, framed his face with her hands, looked at the blood on his lips, the darkness in his eyes, and she didn't see a monster. She saw her partner. "You didn't fail," she said firmly. "We saved each other." She kissed him. It wasn't tentative, wasn't a kiss of submission. It was a kiss of claim. It tasted of iron and rain, fierce, desperate. When they broke apart, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. "Let's go home, Serafina." But they couldn't leave yet. Edmund stumbled in from outside, bruised, bleeding, but alive. "Sir, miss, are you—" "We're fine," Lucian said. "Get the car if it's drivable." "It's totaled, sir, but I've called for backup." Within 20 minutes, 3 black SUVs arrived, Lucian's security team. They swept the warehouse, found the mercenaries Darius had hired, all unconscious, some already fleeing. One remained. A young man, couldn't be more than 25. He sat against a crate, hands raised, terrified. "Please," he begged. "I didn't want to be here. Darius said if I didn't help, he'd kill my sister. Please." Sarah walked over to him, slowly. Lucian moved to stop her. She shook her head. She crouched down, eye level with the young vampire. "What's your name, Marcus?" "Marcus Webb." "Where's your sister now, Marcus?" "At home, in Cambridge. She doesn't know anything about this." Sarah studied him. His hands weren't just raised, they were shaking. His eyes were bloodshot, not from violence, from crying. "Watch their hands. When someone lies, they fidget." Marcus's hands were steady, even in terror. He was telling the truth. "Let him go," Sarah said. Lucian's security team looked shocked. "Miss Ravencroft, he participated in, under duress, let him go." Sarah stood, looked at Lucian. "Please." Lucian stared at her, then nodded. "You heard her. Release him." Marcus scrambled to his feet. "Thank you. Thank you, Go home," Sarah said gently. "Protect your sister, and stay away from men like Darius." Marcus ran. Lucian pulled Sarah aside. "That was a risk." "I know, but kindness is my power. My father taught me that. I won't let Darius or my mother take it away." Lucian's expression softened. He touched her cheek. "You're extraordinary. I'm learning." They found Darius's body 3 hours later, at the bottom of the elevator shaft, neck broken. But that wasn't what killed him. Dr. Thorne was brought in by Lucian's team. He examined the corpse, looked up with wide eyes. "He was dying," Thorne said. "Blood disease, rare, incurable. He had maybe 3 weeks left." Sarah stepped forward. "What kind of blood disease?" "Thanatos syndrome. It attacks vampire blood cells, makes them unable to process feeding. Essentially, he was starving to death from the inside." Lucian's jaw clenched. "How long did he have it?" Based on the progression, at least 6 months. He knew he was dying, which is why Thorne pulled out a syringe from Darius's jacket. He was carrying this, a massive dose of chelating agents. He was planning to take Miss Devereaux's blood, force a transfusion. Sarah's stomach turned. Would that have worked? No, it would have killed him faster, but it might have bought him a few days. Desperation makes people do terrible things. Lucian looked down at his brother's body, his expression unreadable. He was trying to save himself, Lucian said quietly. And he thought I was the obstacle, not the disease. Sir, one of the security team called. We found something else. In Darius's warehouse office, they discovered files. Hundreds of pages. Communications with Vivian going back 2 years. The affair, the plan to kill Thomas, the insurance scheme, Vivian's promise to deliver Sarah to Darius in exchange for money and council access. Everything documented. She didn't just betray you once, Lucian said, reading through the papers. She was selling you to him piece by piece for months. Sarah took the files, held them. Evidence, proof, ammunition. Good, she said. We'll need these. 5 weeks after the wedding. Tuesday morning. Blackstone Correctional was not a place of redemption. It was a place of forgetting. Built into the side of a mountain in western Massachusetts. Gray stone, no windows. Guards who were all former military. Enhanced humans who could handle supernatural inmates. Sarah arrived alone. Lucian had offered to come. She'd refused. This is something I need to do myself. The visiting room was sterile. White walls, metal table, 2 chairs. Sarah sat, waited. The door opened. Vivian shuffled in. She looked nothing like the woman from the gala. The platinum hair was gone, grown out to show gray roots. No makeup, prison jumpsuit in institutional orange, her hands cuffed in front, but her eyes still held that calculating gleam. Serafina, Vivian's voice cracked. You came. She sat across from Sarah, reached out as if to take her daughter's hands. Sarah kept her hands in her lap. I came to tell you something, and I wanted to see your face when I said it. Vivian's expression shifted, from false hope to dawning horror. You taught me to endure pain, Sarah continued. You sold me, betrayed me, killed my father, all for money and status. You told me I was worthless, that suffering was my only value. Sarah leaned forward. But you were wrong. I wasn't made to endure. I was made to conquer. And I have. I'm Lady Ravencroft now. I sit on the Night Council. I run Cross Industries alongside Lucian. I've taken your $10 million and turned it into the Devereaux Foundation. We help abused victims escape their families. Vivian's face went white. You took my money. It was never your money, it was my father's. And now it's doing what he would have wanted, saving people from monsters. Sarah stood. You'll spend the next 40 years here, with nothing. No status, no money, no power, just the memory of what you lost. She walked to the door, knocked for the guard. Serafina, wait. Vivian lunged forward. The cuffs clanged against the table. You can't just leave me here. I'm your mother. Sarah turned back. One last look. No, you were the woman who gave birth to me. But Mrs. Whitmore is my mother now, and Lucian is my family. She smiled. Cold, final. You're just a cautionary tale. The door opened. The guard gestured. Serafina, please, I'm sorry, I love you. Sarah walked out. The door slammed shut, cutting off Vivian's screams. That evening, the Night Council held an emergency session. Magistrate Greystone presided. The 5 council members sat in judgment, but this time Sarah sat with them, not as a witness, as a member. By unanimous vote, Greystone announced to the gathered assembly, Serafina Ravencroft is hereby granted a seat on the Night Council, representing the House of Ravencroft alongside her husband. Applause rippled through the chamber. Not everyone was happy, but no one dared object. After the ceremony, Lord Ashford approached. The werewolf alpha, gruff, intimidating. You did good, kid, he said. Taking down your own mother. That takes guts. It takes justice, Sarah corrected. Ashford grinned. You're going to fit in just fine here. In the lobby, Lucian was waiting, leaning against the wall. How do you feel, he asked. Free. 1 year after the wedding. Spring. Ravencroft Manor in spring was a different place. The gardens bloomed. Cherry blossoms drifted on the breeze. The windows were open, letting in sunlight and birdsong. The Devereaux Foundation Gala was tonight. Boston's elite, human and supernatural, all gathered to celebrate the Foundation's success. 27 women and 43 children rescued from abusive situations. 3 shelters operational, a 4th under construction. Sarah stood at the podium, 6 months pregnant now, glowing in a midnight blue gown that accommodated her growing belly. Lucian sat in the front row, next to Mrs. Whitmore, Edmund, the council members, all there to support her. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah began, her voice strong, clear. "A year ago I was told I was worthless, that my only value was in what I could endure, what I could suffer, what I could survive." She paused, let the words settle. "But I learned something. Survival isn't victory. Transformation is. Every woman in our shelters tonight was told the same lie, that they had to endure, accept, submit." Sarah touched her necklace. Not the Ravencroft rubies tonight, a simple silver locket, inside a photo of her father, Thomas Devereux, smiling. "My father taught me that kindness is power, that we don't have to become monsters to fight them. We just have to be braver than we think possible." Applause began to ripple. "So tonight we celebrate, not survival, but victory, not endurance, but conquest. And we promise every woman out there still suffering, you are not worthless. You are priceless. And we will fight for you." The room erupted. Standing ovation, tears, hope. Sarah stepped down from the podium. Lucian was there, helping her, always there. "You were magnificent," he whispered. "We were magnificent." That night as they drove home, Sarah looked out the window, at the city lights, at Boston spreading below them like a constellation. Somewhere in western Massachusetts, Vivian sat in a cell, alone, forgotten. Somewhere in a grave, Thomas Devereux rested, his name restored, his legacy honored. And here, in this car, in this moment, Seraphina Ravencroft carried the future. She thought about this girl who'd stood in that brownstone, wearing white, shaking, and she smiled, because that girl was gone. In her place stood a queen, a mother, a force of nature. They'd told her to endure the pain. She'd learned to conquer it instead.